Hare Krishna, welcome to Gita Gyan level 2, week 19. So please join us with the Mangalacharan prayers. Om Agyana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshuru Militam Yena Tasmai Sri Guruve Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Parakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajadam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vigna Vinasha Narasim Hariti Namini Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langayatim Girim Yat Kripa Tamaham Vande Shri Guru Dinatarinam Paramananda Madhavam Sri Chaitanya Mishwaram Om Tat Sat. So Hare Krishna everyone, again welcome back to our Gita Gyan level 2. So we are continuing with our story from Gita Mahatmya. So Lord Shiva tells to Parvati, my dear Parvati, now I will relate to you the glories of the 9th chapter of Srimad Bhagavad Gita. And this story begins in a town called, it's a very famous town, you must have heard this name before, Mahishmati. You know, so the town's name is Mahishmati. So, and it's an ancient town during a different age, and it is along the bank of the beautiful Narmada River, one of the 7 holy rivers. There are many holy rivers, but the principal 7 holy rivers, one of them is Narmada River. And along this, where the Narmada River flows, was the ancient city of Mahishmati. Now, it's still there, though this ancient city is no longer visible. It's all in archaeological findings and ruins like that. But it's nearby the modern day city of Maheshwar. It's in Madhya Pradesh. Now you see, this is the map of India. And in India, somewhere in the middle area called Madhya Pradesh. And in Madhya Pradesh, there is a modern day town called Maheshwar, which is near the archaeological dig site of the ancient city of Mahishmati. You can see the name also sounds similar. So, and it's a very famous historical city. It's even one of the most important If you follow Indian history, it's one of the most important city in the southern part of the Avanti kingdom. And it said that archaeological sites show there are about more than 100 temples within that region of that city. So anyway, this is the beautiful river Narmada, which flows, right? If you go there now also, in that area of Maheshwar, you will find a lot of temples, ancient temples also. And foremost about one of those temples is called the Chaturbhuj Narayan Mandir. So this is the temple, Chaturbhuj Narayan Mandir. It's a big temple, ancient temple also, many hundreds of years old. And of course, there are other temples like Kashi Vishwanath Mandir and others. So it's a nice place to go and visit. So anyway, in this ancient city of Mahishmati, Lord Shiva tells Parvati, there was once a Brahmana who lived there. Now, this Brahmana was a very good Brahmana. He followed the injunctions very carefully. He was well studied in his in the Vedas. He possessed many good qualities of the Brahminical class. What are the good qualities of the Brahminical class? Tolerance, humility, simplicity, this kind of things, right? So satisfaction. So these kind of qualities he had, and at the same time he was also very learned. And because of his learning, a lot of people used to come to him and ask him to perform sacrifices, and in this way he used to receive a lot of charity. So this is one of the things Brahmanas have 6 activities that they should do and nothing else. This is the 6 activities of a Brahmana. Number 1, they should study the Vedas, and number 2, they should teach the Vedas to others. So, and then number 3, they should perform sacrifices, yagya, and then number 4, they should teach fire sacrifice or yagya to others. And then number 5, they can receive charity, and number 6, they can also give charity. So this is the only 6 things a Brahmana should do. So the Brahmana is not expected to work, receive salary and all that. So they rely fully on charity. And at the same time, they are very simple-minded. They take what they get and just enough for them to maintain a simple lifestyle. And whatever excess, they will give in charity to others. So that is how Brahminical life was. So anyway, so this Brahmana, his name was called Madhava. And he was a very good Brahmana. He was expert in performing fire sacrifices. So once, and he was also married. He had a family, a wife, and some young children. So what he did, when he collected some charity from these activities, he would use them in further performing fire sacrifices. So once he was performing fire sacrifices, a great fire sacrifice like this. And then for this particular fire sacrifice, this is a, there in the Vedic scriptures, sometimes there are different types of animals which are used in sacrifices. Like a horse sacrifice, fire sacrifice where a horse is put inside is called an Ashwamedha Yagya. So like that, they have Ashwamedha, Gomedha. Gomedha is like cow. So like that. Now, people may ask, isn't this not right? This kind of fire sacrifices where we kill animals. So this kind of fire sacrifices actually, number 1, the type of the animals which are sacrificed inside, they will actually get a human body right after that. So, the birth after birth after birth. So there is a sequence of species the soul has to transfer to. Like in the Shiva Purana, they say Puchai, Pulugai, Pambai, like that. It's like one by one, the soul migrates from one species of animal to another species of animal until finally it comes to a cow, and then from there it becomes a human. This is all, due to their past sinful activities. So they have to go through like this. So these fire sacrifices, some of these fire sacrifices, which are meant for various purposes, when the animal is sacrificed, the animal also benefits. Straight away, the animal immediately receives comes to the human birth of life immediately. But this was also sacrifices which used to be done in the previous yugas. And these sacrifices are all mainly fruitive, karma kanda, to achieve some kind of material result. Never for spiritual purposes. It's only for material result. They want to get something. So they perform these sacrifices. And the Brahmanas were so pure at that time that these fire sacrifices, they simply by mantra, they could make the fire start. They don't use matches, right? Simply by the power of their mantra, the fire will start automatically. So the Brahmanas were very pure. So what happened is, now it is Kali Yuga. In Kali Yuga, these animal sacrifices are banned. They are not allowed. So this is mentioned in the scriptures, it's mentioned in the Vedas. There are few things which are banned in Kali Yuga. For example, entering into the fire, the burning fire of the husband. You know, previously people used to do sati. The lady, the wife, if the husband dies, used to enter into the fire. And that was for previous ages. In Kali Yuga, it is forbidden. So like that, fire sacrifices involving animals is also forbidden in Kali Yuga. Because people misunderstand. And the Brahmanas are no longer as pure. They cannot even start the fire. The type of mantras are not clearly understood. So it doesn't give the same result. So therefore it is banned. So anyway, but this is during a different yuga, in a previous yuga. So at that time, fire sacrifices were performed everywhere, and this was common. So we are going to hear, so for offering the sacrifice, a goat was brought. This Madhava Brahmana, he was performing sacrifices, and for that a goat was brought. And when they started to clean the goat in preparation for the sacrifice, and when they brought the goat to the sacrificial area, suddenly, to their surprise, the goat started to laugh. It laughed in a loud voice and said, "Oh Brahmana, what is the benefit of performing so many fire sacrifices that simply bind us up in the wheel of birth and death? Just see my position due to my performing so many fire sacrifices." So this is what the goat said. So the goat was saying, why you are doing all these things? It's only going to keep you trapped in the cycle of birth and death. All these Vedic fire sacrifices and all that is not going to help you. You're only going to remain in this cycle of birth and death. Just look at me. Then the goat said, previously in my last birth, I was also like you. I was also a Brahmana and I was also performing fire sacrifices. And in this way, but just look at me, how did I end up here? And now I myself am going to be sacrificed. So then everybody became very astonished when they heard the words of this goat. They became curious. And then the Madhava Brahmana, he inquired very respectfully to the goat. Oh, with folded hands, he said, "Oh, dear goat, how did you become goat in this life? Can you please tell us what happened in your previous life that you now," naturally, he would be shocked because the goat said, "I was also like you." So what mistake did the goat do that he ended up as a goat? So he didn't want to make the same mistake, the Madhava Brahmana. So he asked very respectfully to the goat, "Please tell us." And then the goat said, "Oh Brahmana, in my previous birth, I was born in a very pure Brahmana family. And I was also like you, very carefully performed all the ritualistic activities given in the Vedas. But one day, my wife, she wished to worship Durga because our child had some kind of a disease, a smallpox or something like that. And for that purpose, a sacrificial ceremony was required for the worship of Durga. And for this, she requested me to get a goat. So then he went and got the goat. And when they were about to sacrifice the goat to Mother Durga, the goat suddenly somehow was also able to speak. And then the goat said, "Oh, sinful, lowest of all Brahmana, you wish to make my children fatherless? For this reason, you will also take the birth of a goat in your next life." So like that, the goat cursed him as the goat was dying. They already cut the goat's neck, and at that time when it was dying, this is what the goat said. So this is actually true, because one of the mantras, when they perform animal sacrifices, one of the mantras they need to say to the animal which they are sacrificing has the word mamsa. In mamsa, the word mamsa means meat. And one is supposed to whisper this word mamsa together with a mantra. It comes this word mamsa to the animal's ear before they sacrifice it. So basically the translation of that word mamsa, it means meat, but it also means just like how you are killing me now, in the future I will kill you. So that is the translation. You are killing me now, therefore in the future I will come and kill you. So this is the word mamsa. So they know, but they do it anyway. So the goat in this way was about to be sacrificed. It was sacrificed, and then in its last breath it uttered this curse. Amazingly, it was audible and understood by all the humans, all the people there. So then the Brahmana who sacrificed this goat, then he said, "When I was about to die, I remembered this curse, and then in my next birth, now you can see me, I have now become a goat. And now I am facing the same problem, that I'm facing the same thing which I did to the other goat in my previous life. So now you are about to sacrifice me." So in this way, he was laughing. So then the Brahmana, the Madhava Brahmana, he was very astonished and very shocked to hear this also. Then he didn't continue with the sacrifice. He stopped the fire sacrifice, and then he further requested the goat to speak further. Then the goat continued speaking. So then he said, "Just like this, in another time, I would like to tell you a story," right? So he said, in another time, right, in a place known as Kurukshetra. So Kurukshetra, remember Kurukshetra? Kurukshetra is the place where the Mahabharata war took place, where the Bhagavad Gita was spoken. So it's a holy place, not only because Mahabharata took place, even before that, it was known as a holy place for many, many ages. And usually Kurukshetra is also, besides for the Bhagavad Gita, Kurukshetra is also very, very famous for performing charity during eclipse. So when there is eclipse and all that, people used to go to Kurukshetra, and anyone who performs charity during an eclipse in Kurukshetra, they are supposed to get very great benediction, material benedictions, right? But still very, very great benedictions. So in this area of this Kurukshetra, at that time, during the time the goat was telling the story, there used to live a king. And this king's name was Chandra Sharma. And he was a very great king, descended from the line of the Surya Vamsa. He comes from the Surya Vamsa, the sun god's dynasty, just like Lord Ramachandra. So one of the descendants. So at that time, one day a solar eclipse took place. And the king, in conjunction with the Vedic injunctions, he wanted to perform charity. So he invited so many people and he gave charity to so many people. He fed food to so many people. And then he gave food to all the brahmanas. And then lastly, and then he fasted also throughout the day while he was giving out all this charity. And the last person he gave charity to, he invited the last brahmana who came. So this was the brahmana who came, the last one. And when he gave this charity to that person, suddenly what happened was he saw a Shudra man followed the Brahmana. So a Shudra man came from behind, and suddenly the Shudra man, a Shudra person means is someone who is like a low caste person, someone who is who performs menial work, right? So, and this suddenly, together with the Shudra man, a third class, sorry, it's below the classes, a lady called Chandala, a dog eater, a very, very low, this is not even in the Varnashram Dharma. Like, you know, we have Kshatriyas, we have Brahmana, Kshatriyas, Vaishya, and Shudra. These four are within the Varnashram system. But even lower than that, out of the Varnashram system, you could say outcast, is what we call the Chandala. So they are not even in the, they are completely uncivilized. So when they, you know, they eat dogs and they eat all kinds of things. So this lady, the wife of this Shudra, was a Chandala. So she also appeared over there suddenly. And suddenly both this Shudra and the Chandala, they started moving towards the Brahmana who was about to receive the, what do you call, the charity. And the king was watching this. He was astonished. Out of the blue, suddenly this Shudra and Chandala lady appeared suddenly out of nowhere. And they started to move closer and closer towards this Brahmana who was standing very peacefully. And then as soon as they came, they touched the Brahmana and they disappeared inside the Brahmana. It's like as if they went into the Brahmana. And the lady also did the same. She also came and she moved, she touched the Brahmana, and as if she was entering into the Brahmana. But the Brahmana remained undisturbed, and he saw what was happening, and he started to chant. So he was chanting something, something like a mantra. The king could see the lips of the Brahmana moving. So after witnessing all these things and being stunned, he was amazed. So then he went to, but before he could say anything, as this Brahmana was chanting the mantras, whatever mantras that he was chanting, suddenly the two personalities, the Shudra and the what do you call, the Chandala lady, the husband and wife, the Shudra and the Chandala lady, the husband and wife, they suddenly appeared outside the Brahmana's body again. And not only that, suddenly the entire place became very, very bright, and they could see Vishnu Dutas. Vishnu Dutas are the servants of Lord Vishnu from Vaikuntha. The Vishnu Dutas suddenly appeared, materialized in the air, and they were protecting this Brahmana. And in this way, they chased the Chandala and the Shudra man away from this place. And then the Vishnu Dutas also disappeared. So the king, who was watching all these things in amazement, he was surprised. And then he said, "Oh my goodness, what just happened?" So then he came to the Brahmana, and then he asked the Brahmana, "Oh learned one, oh Brahmana, who were these two persons who came and entered you and then suddenly came out? And who were those shining people who appeared and chased those two people away? What mantra did you chant? I saw your mouth moving. And what deity did you remember? Which deity did you remember as you were chanting this?" Then the Brahmana, very peacefully, he replied. So this is Kurukshetra, and an eclipse just happened. So what happened was, sin personified. If you take sin, all kinds of sin, if you take all kinds of sin in the world, and this sin takes a human form, then that human form was that Chandala which you saw. That was that Shudra which you saw, right? So so basically he was sin personified, and the wife of sin personified is called offense. So the lady was offense, the man was sin. Sin and offense. So husband and wife. Offense means aparad. So performing things which will destroy devotion, that is aparad. Like, what is the difference between sin and aparad? Sin is doing, like, for example, killing someone is a sin. Not giving charity to a deserving person is a sin. Being greedy is a sin. Illicit activities are a sin, right? They create sinful reactions, and one has to suffer the result of that sinful reaction by taking a lower birth or suffering in hell. So that is sin. What is aparad? Aparad is, in English, it's called blasphemy, right? It is performing things which are sacrilegious. That means in a spiritual activity, let's say there is a yagya going on, and someone goes and throws dirty things into the yagya pit. So that is not sin, but that is aparad. It's actually creating desecration, sacrilege, right? So, or when somebody is serving the deity, they make a mistake. So that is called aparad. So there's a difference. And between sin and aparad is more dangerous, because aparad can actually it can block the devotional advancement, whereas sin can be cleared. By performing by performing spiritual activities, one can remove sin, but aparad takes longer to remove. So there's a difference. So anyway, the Brahmana was just telling the two husband and wife that appeared just now is sin and aparad. Both of them appeared, and they tried to come and cover me. So sin personified tried to cover me. Aparad personified tried to cover me. But what I did was I started chanting the 9th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. So as I chanted the 9th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, I remembered Sri Govinda. So, and in this way, I was protected from sin and I was protected from aparad. So in this way, the goat was telling the story of what happened at that time. And because I was protected by the 9th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, the Vishnu Dutas themselves came and protected me. So then the king asked, the goat was continued telling, then the king asked, oh, such wonderful activities has happened. This must be an omen for me. So please tell me, can you also teach me how to chant the 9th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita? I too wish to be free of sin and aparad. So can you please teach me? So this Brahmana, then he accepted this king as his disciple, and he started teaching him the 9th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. And in this way, every day this king will recite the 9th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, and he became very, very spiritually advanced. He became free of sin, he became free of aparad, and at the end of life, he also attained the lotus feet of Govinda. So the goat was telling this story to Madhava, the priest, the Brahmana. So in this way, after hearing this wondrous account, Madhava immediately, the Brahmana immediately decided to give up this Vedic sacrifices. He thought, what was the point I do all these Vedic sacrifices? I'm only getting material benefits. Whereas this person, simply by chanting the 9th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, he attained Vaikuntha Loka, where there is no birth and death, where there is no grief, there is no suffering. So I will better I use my time in doing this. So together, the goat and Madhava, the Brahmana, both of them started to search out a person who would teach them the 9th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. And then in this way, every day they would chant the 9th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. And at the end of their life, they also attained the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord. So that's the story recounted by Lord Shiva to Parvati about the glories of the 9th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. Now, before we go into the 9th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, we could hear some lessons from what we have understood from this story. So one of the lessons this story is trying to teach us is trying to show us the futility of fruitive activities or karma kanda. So it's common, people, when they want to, there are two types of people. There are pious people and there are non-pious people. So the non-pious people, they are basically atheistic. They think that they can achieve whatever they want to achieve simply by their own will. So they go on trying. Sometimes they're successful, sometimes they're not, but they have nothing to do with God. And they don't care about God's instructions. They do whatever they think is right. So those people are atheistic, demonic type of people. Then there are also pious people, the suras. So the pious people, they also have desires. They also have things which they want to attain, but they go through the scriptures. They follow the injunctions given. So the scriptures will say, okay, you want to attain this, okay, you do the sacrifice. You want to get cured from this particular disease, okay, then you perform this. So like that, there are different rituals and sacrifices given. But all of this is basically material, right? So it is not really the real purpose of religion. So it's kind of like performing a business deal with God. You go to God, you tell God, okay, or usually in Devata worship, this happens, right? Like I break a coconut, I offer you an archana, please ensure that I do well in my exam, or I give you this offering, or I do this yagya, please make sure that I get a good job, or I marry a good husband, or my troubles are removed. So this kind of business dealings go on. So I give you this, you give me something in return. So that is pious. At least there is some faith of God. At least that they go through the scripture. They try to keep God within their life. So it is fine. But at the same time, this kind of activity is called punya karma. Good activities, punya karma, because they include God inside the picture. But it is not spiritual. And it is not really what's pleasing to Krishna. Because Krishna is not interested in this. Krishna wants us to actually come back to him. But so long as we have our material desires and we are trying to, get what we want, so it is not really going to work out that way. So Krishna, therefore, there is punya karma and there is spiritual activity. So spiritual activity is nothing to do with this kind of fruitive or karma kanda. So we call this kind of business dealings or fruitive result called karma kanda. So the lesson behind this story is, no matter how much we carefully follow this karma kanda activities, how much we carefully follow the rituals and everything, we are bound to make some mistake somewhere. Because these things we have to follow very carefully, and in the end, at the same time, it's not really going to give us ultimate happiness, because we are simply trying to purchase what we think is going to make us happy. But what happens is, in the end, we again have to take birth. So, and as we take birth after birth after birth, there is no guarantee we may get a human life. Even if we try to follow everything so carefully, some mistake may happen somewhere, someone may get hurt, someone may have some problem. So we have to pay for all those karma. So better to not go into that path of the Vedas, but instead look further. The Vedas, they always encourage, okay, I give you all these things just to satisfy your desire, but really start thinking of something higher. Start thinking of escaping this cycle of birth and death. So therefore, then we have the Upanishads given in the Vedas, which talk about something higher. So that is the idea behind it, right? So, and then we can also understand from this story how if we take up to spiritual activity, not punya karma, spiritual activity, not simply fire sacrifices like that, but spiritual activity. What is spiritual activity? Spiritual activity means we do these activities not because we want material result. We want to purify ourselves. That means we are doing it for the purpose of purification, not because we want to get some material benefit. So this is called spiritual activity. For example, fasting, right? Fasting on Ekadasi. For example, doing chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. For example, reading Bhagavad Gita, or hearing Bhagavad Gita, or reciting Bhagavad Gita. So these kinds of activities, they are called spiritual activities, or observing a festival for the Lord. Not because I want something in return, but simply for the purpose of purification. Right? So this is called spiritual activity. So we can see how by performing spiritual activity, particularly this chapter 9 Bhagavad Gita, one is able to protect oneself from committing sins and also from committing aparad. So even if one accidentally commits sins or accidentally committed aparad, the greatest protection is given here. Simply by performing these devotional activities, we are protected. So long as we don't purposely do it, right? So accidentally we do, okay. So the person who is following the spiritual path, they are always protected. Even if accidentally they do something, they are still protected by the power of their spiritual activities, by the grace of the Lord. So, and chapter 9 is particularly for this purpose, to protect. So if we feel we want to insulate ourselves from sinful tendency or the idea of performing, so if you want to repent, oh, I feel very sorry, I accidentally did something wrong. So one of the things which we can do is we can take shelter of this 9th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita by reciting the Bhagavad Gita of the 9th chapter, by hearing it, by telling it to others. So these are some activities which we can do. Okay, so that's the story. Okay, so now we will move on to the summary of the 9th chapter. So the 9th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, it's a special name. So it's a very special chapter because this chapter is where the secret of the Bhagavad Gita is kept. So it is said that the Bhagavad Gita is like a chest, a treasure chest. So inside there's the box, and then outside there's the lid, and the treasure is kept right in the middle, inside. So therefore, Bhagavad Gita has 18 chapters, and you see chapter 9 is right in the middle. So chapter 9 and chapter 10, right in the middle. So these two, chapter 9 and chapter 10, are very confidential. So that's why chapter 9 is known as Raja Vidya Yoga, the most confidential knowledge. So that is kept right in between the middle of Bhagavad Gita, carefully protected. So before we understand the summary of chapter 9, let us talk a little bit about, okay, this is how chapter 9 starts, 9.1. So how do we understand this chapter 9? So Krishna says, why it is so confidential, why this is secret knowledge? This is secret knowledge because normal people cannot understand this secret knowledge. Particularly, why normal people cannot understand? Because most people, they have envy. They have envy, or what you call asuya. So envy is, some form of jealousy or envy towards God. So why should God only enjoy? I also want to enjoy like him. Why should God only have wealth? I also want his wealth. Why should God enjoy his kingdom? I want his kingdom. So some kind of envy in some way, or envy towards God or envy towards the children of God, the other living entities. So this chapter is very confidential because it can only be understood by someone who does not have envy. At least we must begin by not having envy towards God. We must have, if you know, the envy towards the living entities that sometimes people do have, but in the beginning stage, at least one should not have envy towards God. And in this way, slowly, as we purify ourselves, we lose our envy for others as well. So the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna begins this way. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, "My dear Arjuna, because you are never envious of me, I shall impart to you this most confidential knowledge and realization, knowing which you shall be relieved of the miseries of material existence." So this secret is for those who are not envious. So how to understand what kind of knowledge he is giving? So actually, Krishna is giving the knowledge of how we can come back to him. Krishna is not really interested in satisfying the material desires that we have. Yeah, he has a system for that. So if you want to satisfy our material desires, okay, there the demigods are there. And then on top of that, there's the sacrifices, the yagyas, because ultimately he's the beneficiary. Every yagya that one does, even if it's for the demigods, ultimately the beneficiary is Lord Krishna himself in the form of Vishnu. Vishnu is the master of the sacrifices, right? So the system is there. But why he created all this religion, why he created all this, is because ultimately he wants to guide the souls in this material world to slowly lose taste for these material things and to start searching towards God and try to come back to him. So this is what his main plan, his master plan. So for this, he has three strategies. The first strategy is that he gives the path of material enjoyment. So people want to enjoy materially, okay, he gives this, all these Vedic rituals and everything. You try to enjoy. But as you are trying, eventually you may get frustrated. So then he gives the path of yoga. So the path of yoga is what Krishna really wants all of us to take up, because that is the path that will break the cycle of birth and death. So then one may ask, why doesn't just Krishna give it to us directly? So he doesn't, the thing about it is Krishna doesn't force. So he guides, he gives advice, even to Arjuna, even in the, after talking the entire Bhagavad Gita, the last chapter, chapter 18, Krishna then tells Arjuna, okay, you have heard all these things, now make your decision. Choose what you want to do. So like that, Krishna gives freedom of choice. Now, why is freedom of choice very important? Because Krishna is not interested in forcing us to do what he wants us to do. Krishna wants to have a type of relationship with the souls, with all of us. And it's basically based on this statement. Love can only exist when there is freedom of will. We cannot force a person to love us. We cannot create that kind of situation, and love cannot survive when there is forced situation. So it has to be a choice. So every living entity is given that choice. He can either look at Krishna and develop love for Krishna, or call prema, right? And when he looks at Krishna, he can say, wow, such a wonderful personality, so wonderful his qualities, so wonderful his pastimes. And then he develops love for that Supreme Person. And with that love, he has the desire to love and serve that person. So this is called bhakti. The desire to serve and to be with that person, that is called bhakti. servitude. It's basically built upon servitude. That is called prema. But there is also another choice. The jiva may open his eyes, look at Krishna, and instead of feeling whatever that I just mentioned, he could instead feel, oh, why so wonderful, that person? I also want to be like that. Why is he only enjoying? Why is this all his power? I want this. I want to become better than him. So this is called envy. So, it's natural. When we see anyone who is very wonderful, there are two feelings which we may get. One is we may appreciate that person very well. The second is we may feel envious of that person, right? So this one of two things. We cannot remain neutral for long. Like, for example, the neighbor buys a new car, right? What we will say? So there will be either you genuinely appreciate or we become envious, right? Or if somebody gets a promotion in office, so this kind of behavior comes about. So this is what happened with the jiva. The jiva who decided to look at Krishna and fall in love with Krishna and decided to serve Krishna, they remained with Krishna in the spiritual world. Whereas the jivas who saw Krishna with envy and wanted his power, wanted his kingdom, wanted his opulence, and had that kind of thought. So Krishna doesn't block, Krishna doesn't stop. So he has such power where he can give us opportunities for us to also try to get this. But it's our nature. So therefore, he created the material world for that purpose. So we have come to the material world. So what is the opposite of prema? The opposite of prema is kama or lust, material lust. Lust, which is based on the seed of asuya. Kama is based on envy. Asuya is envy. So therefore, and it manifests in terms of icha and dvesh. Icha means desires and aversion, dualities, right? They desire something very strongly, they also hate something very strongly. So we call this the love-hate. So it comes due to desires, lust, and which is the seed coming from envy. And they want to have power, control, right? Become the boss. So those who are in prema, they are within the antaranga shakti, which is called the internal energy of the Lord. The Parashakti, internal energy of the Lord, which builds the spiritual world. The spiritual world is here, those who have prema. Those who don't have this, who have kama and envy, right? They come into the external energy of the Lord, the Bahiranga Shakti, the shadow energy of the spiritual energy. And this material world is built out of that shadow energy. So we are all here in this material world. That means we have at one point of time had this kind of desires and we have all come here. But Krishna, he is our eternal father. He doesn't want to leave us. So he finds ways to bring us back. See, he knows ultimately we will all come back, right? But he's eager for us to come back fast. So therefore, he recommends to Arjuna, follow the path of yoga. So those who have become frustrated with material path of trying to satisfy their senses, they may think, okay, I want to break. Why should I suffer? Why should I go through birth after birth after birth, various species, become a goat, become this, why do I need to go through this? I want to be free of this cycle of birth and death. And Krishna also wants us to be free from this cycle of birth and death. But that is just the first step. To become free from the prison. Imagine we are in a prison. To become free from the prison is just the first step. After being free from the prison, what will we do? That is an important thing, right? What are we going to do after we become free from the prison? If the person is not engaged properly, he may again enter back into the prison, right? Because what is he going to do to earn his upkeep? He has to do something. So he may do something illegal again and again end up in prison, or he may do something very, very positive and he may go back to his home, his eternal home. So the process of yoga is to break the person from the prison, right? And to guide the person back home. Now, to do this, there are two paths in yoga. So this is Bhagavad Gita 3.3. There are two classes of men who try to realize the self. So one class of people is called the Jnana path, or the Sankhya path, or the path of light. So this is, just a moment. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so there's the two paths. One is Jnana path, and the other is called the Bhakti path. Now, Jnana path begins with, Jnana path is for those people who want to have nothing to do with Krishna. They don't want to have anything to do with God, but they are tired of taking birth after birth, but they are still envious of God. They are still envious of God, but they don't want to suffer in this material world. So because they are envious of God, they cannot take the Bhakti path. They cannot go back to God. So they need to go through further purification. And because they don't want to have anything to do with God also doesn't directly help them to respect their wishes. So therefore, he gives this path called the Jnana path for them. So that by doing this Jnana path, they will think that they are free from God. They will think that they are going to be free on their own, right? But by following this path, they become not only free in the end, but they also become purified gradually, so that eventually they lose this envy and they lose this desire. So that is what the Jnana path is all about. So that's meant for those people, right? So Jnana path begins with Karma Yoga, and then goes people who, by the culture of sacrifice, one develops knowledge, one invites knowledge by the culture of sacrifice. And by performing Jnana Yoga, he realizes, by understanding the nature of spirit and matter, the world, he realizes that, hey, there are two types of material within this world. One material is matter, another material is spirit. So, and then he realizes, I am also spirit, I am not matter. And then he realizes that actually, even matter is part of that spirit also. It's coming from a different side, but it's also ultimately everything is part of the energy of the ultimate person. But they don't like to give name to that ultimate person. They will instead say, they won't say that the ultimate person is God. Instead, they like to use words like, the universe, the providence, or or the better word is Brahman. They like to use the word Brahman, light. They don't want to acknowledge the personality of God. But Krishna says, okay, never mind. You can realize me in three ways. One is the Brahman. Brahman means everything is spirit. You are spirit. I am spirit. And we can all, once we realize this, then what happens? We can be freed from this cycle of birth and death. We can be free from the prison once we realize our connection with Brahman. So this is called Brahman realization, or the first level of understanding God. Now, with Brahman realization, further purification takes place to that person, and he continues his, and at that point, he starts to realize, hey, all this light, this Brahman effulgence, this light is everywhere, but surely it must have a source. Let me try to find out where the source of this light is coming from. Right? It's natural, right? We see light everywhere. If somebody asks you where the light is coming from, we will look up and we look for the source. Okay, it's coming from that chandelier, or it's coming from that lamp. or it's coming from the sun, or it's coming from the moon. So every light has a source. So in Brahman realization, one is freed from the material modes, and then he is now completely free to search where is the source of that light. So what he does at that time, he starts searching within himself, within the Atma. He starts searching within the Atma. And therefore, he starts to perform meditation. So therefore, this Sankhya path is also known as the path of inaction. They give up all their duty. They go to a sacred place alone. They perform austerities and they perform the dhyana yoga, the Ashtanga yoga, the 8th form, by posture, by controlling the breath, by meditation. Eventually, they will realize the Paramatma, the source of that light is coming from one single person, that Paramatma. And then they will realize, hey, the same Paramatma is in my heart, is also in your heart. And then they start realizing it's also in every animal's heart. It's also in every plant's heart. It's in every living entity. It is in every atom. It is in every space between atoms. The same Paramatma is everywhere, localized. They can see the form of the source of the Brahman. So when they see that, then they finally become convinced, oh, there is actually a person. So all these forms are coming from one single form. They start realizing that this Paramatma is the ultimate person. He is the Parabrahman. And at that point, they give up their envy. And what do they do at that point? At that point, they try to directly serve the Paramatma. So that is already coming towards bhakti already. They are no longer in jnana, they jump to bhakti. So, but before we go there, right? So this is talking about the Brahman realization. So Bhagavad Gita 6.2, chapter 6 is all talking about all that. So in that joyous state, one who has attained the Brahman, right? One is situated in boundless transcendental happiness. And upon gaining this, he thinks there is no greater gain. There's nothing further. But if he is fortunate, and if he searches for the source of that light, then he comes to Paramatma realization. Then he advances further. But if he is not fortunate, if he doesn't see that way, he's simply satisfied remaining in this Brahman light. That is not really the end of the road for him. He is free from the cycle of birth and death, but he is not home. He's like in between. He's not in prison, but he is not properly situated in society either. He's just outside the prison door. Don't know what to do. So if somebody comes and guides him towards his home, then he's very fortunate. Or if he decides to on his own search for his home, then he's also fortunate. But if he's not, if he's simply remaining there, then because he doesn't know what else to do, he may again come back to this cycle of material birth and death. And then they will start doing welfare activities because they don't know what else to do. They start performing, they build hospitals, they do food services to everybody, feeding the poor. They do altruistic activities. They will have disciples. They will enjoy having disciples, worshipping them as guru. So they like this. So, and they can perform miracles also. They have yogic powers, but they are not back home. They have not attained the ultimate goal. So again, they come down. So that is the problem. So because therefore, Bhagavad Gita gives this warning. He tells here, he thinks there is no greater gain upon reaching Brahman. But actually, if they read further Bhagavad Gita, there is a greater gain. Higher than that is the Dhyana yogis who have attained Paramatma. And higher than that, ultimately, is Bhakti. So therefore, chapter 5.5, before that itself, Krishna has already given the warning. He says, one who knows that the position reached by means of analytical study, which is the Sankhya path, right, can also be attained by devotional service. What can be attained? This one, this boundless transcendental happiness, this freedom from cycle of birth and death. It can also attain it by the bhakti path. So such a person sees things as they are. They know. So then why would someone want to take the bhakti path? So bhakti path is much better because it's easier, number one. You don't have to do such kadumyana davam, That's the jnana sankhya path. Very, very difficult. After many, many, many births, one attains this position. Krishna will say in the Bhagavad Gita. And it is a path which is not happy. Very difficult, unhappy path. One doesn't want to, one starves himself, one doesn't eat, mechanically controls himself, very painful sitting posture, so many things he has to do. Very dry, there's no pleasure in the path because he has rejected God and he's doing it on his own. So it's a very difficult path, but it purifies that person eventually, right? But it's meant for those who are asuyas, those who are envious, right? It is not meant for those who are not envious. So better than this is to take up the bhakti path. So at any point also they can come to the bhakti path. If one is fortunate, they can start the bhakti path right from the beginning, or they may start from the karma yoga, then move to bhakti, or if they may start from, they can go to jnana and then only move to bhakti, or like the dhyani yogis, after attaining Paramatma, eventually they reach bhakti anyway, right? So the jnana yogis who don't go upwards, they come back down and perform welfare activities. But if the jnana yogi is fortunate to meet a devotee, he may jump to bhakti. But if the jnana yogi is not fortunate to meet a devotee, and he is at least still in some way he wants to search out the source of the light, then he may go to become the dhyana yogi, which is higher. And from there, automatically he sees the Paramatma in his heart and he will turn to bhakti. So it's a very long process. Karma, jnana, dhyana, then only bhakti. So therefore, Krishna says, what he says? He says, renunciation of work and work in devotion are both good for liberation. Both gives liberation. But of the two, devotional service is better. So he says, don't do this. Don't take this envious path. Take this bhakti path. It's much easier. So one performs sadhana bhakti, right? What is sadhana bhakti? Begins by chanting, hearing, and all these things, right? So Krishna says, you start off with doing work. Don't just give up everything and come. Continue your work, but do it as a sacrifice for Vishnu. So that begins our sadhana bhakti. And then therefore, after that, Krishna, to progress, Krishna will say, oh Arjuna, surrendering all your work to me. Do your work, but surrender it to me, your results to me. And do it with full knowledge of me. How do we do it with full knowledge of me? By hearing Bhagavad Gita, by hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, so we can hear more and more about God, more and more about Krishna. So as our understanding of Krishna grows, our material attachment dwindles, reduces. So that's the idea, right? And in this way, we will learn how to act without desire for profit, with no claim for proprietorship, because everything belongs to God, and free from lethargy. That means not that we become lazy. We do our duty with diligence, but we do it with increased diligence because now we're doing it for God. So wouldn't we want to really please God in our duties? So therefore, Krishna says, fight, Arjuna, do your duty. So that is the beginning of bhakti. So sorry, I had unstable internet, so I got kicked off just now. Okay, let me just continue. Just give me a moment. Okay. All right. Sorry about that again. I don't know why the internet is unstable. Okay. Anyway, to continue. So then after we perform sadhana bhakti, we come to the higher level of Bhava Bhakti. So as we practice this, as we do this more and more and more, we progress. Eventually, we come to the level of developing ecstasy. So Bhava Bhakti is an advanced stage where we get ecstasy. At this point, Brahman is already realized. So as we continue, ultimately, we attain from Bhava Bhakti, we come to the level of understanding Paramatma. So then Krishna says, right, of all yogis, the one with great faith who always abides in me, thinks of me within himself, renders loving service to me. So renders loving service to me. He is the most intimately united with me in yoga. So that is the ultimate. Here it goes clearly to say what Krishna wants. He wants us to come back to him, ideally through the bhakti path. So then one can attain prema bhakti. So then Krishna says, being engaged in my transcendental service, he is sure to attain me. So this is the way back home. The way back home is to get prema bhakti, pure devotional service, which is at the highest level. So when we get this, then we are home. So, and once we get this, we will never come back into this material world. So that is the idea. This is the highest and most perfect goal. And this is called Bhagavan realization. To understand that everything comes from that one single personality, who is the supreme personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. And Krishna says in 9.1, because you are never envious of me, I shall impart to you this most confidential knowledge and realization. So that is what Krishna is going to tell Arjuna in chapter 9, this aspect of devotional service. So it begins, chapter 9, this chapter, he tells how this is not for the envious, it is for the other group of people who accept Krishna as the supreme personality of Godhead and who want to come back to him. So it's for that people. And he says how this is the most confidential knowledge, the secret of all knowledge. This is his master plan, which he is revealing, right? And he talks about the nature of bhakti. So you can see this 9.2. This knowledge is the king of education, Raja Vidyam, most secret of all secrets, Raja Guhyam. It is the purest knowledge. It gives direct perception of the self by realization. So simply by following the process, simply by chanting and hearing, we will come to this platform. It is the perfection of religion. This is the last word of religion. The whole point of religion, from material, fruitive activities, from jnana yoga path, this is the perfection to ultimately attain bhakti. It is everlasting and it is joyfully performed, unlike the jnana path, which is very difficult, very unhappy to perform. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, there's no happiness in the other path. Whereas in this path, just the process of the path itself, we may not have reached prema bhakti, but simply by following bhakti yoga, even in the lower stages, we are joyful. So that's why bhakti yoga, it doesn't require that we give up our family. It doesn't require that we give up our job. None of these things. We can continue what we are doing. Just add Krishna into the picture, right? And the process is very nice. Simply chanting, don't need to go to the forest, sit alone in a very uncomfortable situation, get bitten by mosquitoes, and then, do meditation, control the breath and all that. No, all we have to do is simply chant the names of Krishna, which are very nice to chant. The names are very beautiful names, right? Madhava, Govinda, Radha, Krishna, Gopala, and particularly the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. We can remember the pastimes of the Lord. No need to remember, no need to stare into a fixed spot. No need to stare into light, which is so impersonal. We can simply remember all the beautiful pastimes of the Lord, right? No need to go on fasting completely without food. We can eat prasadam, Krishna prasadam, right? Which is so nice. So these kind of activities are very, very joyfully performed. So, and simply by joyfully performing them, we will elevate ourselves to a higher level. And then the next parts of this chapter 9, Krishna will talk about himself, because Bhakti Yoga is ultimately understanding Krishna, right? To know more about Krishna's amazing qualities. So because amazing quality, therefore he talks about Krishna's amazing quality. And particularly the word achintya is used. Achintya means inconceivable. You cannot imagine, you cannot conceive. It's not possible for us to understand. So he has this special ability. That is the one of the special powers of God. Inconceivable, cannot understand. What do I mean? Krishna himself explains. He says, everything is created by me, yet creation doesn't rest in me. Now, how is that? So that's why it's called inconceivable. Creation is created by me, but creation doesn't rest in me. I am free to do what I want. I don't have to manage and look after it. All beings are in me, but I am not in them. That means Krishna may be inside our heart, but he is not trapped inside our heart, right? I am the maintainer of all living entities, and I am everywhere, but I am not part of this cosmic manifestation. So it's separate. It's working separately from him. Though he is the maintainer and everything, and though he is everywhere, yet it is separate. So how is that? So this is called, just like how Krishna says, I am far away, yet I am very close. How is that possible? So this is called Achintya Shakti. Not possible by us, but possible by God. I am the source of creation, and by my will, it is maintained and annihilated. Still, so much of work this sounds like. I am the source of creation. I am maintaining it. Sounds like a huge amount of work. But still, all this work cannot bind me. It doesn't trap him. He is free to do what he wants. God doesn't do work. He only enjoys. So this is the position of Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Right? So therefore he continues, all created beings rest in me, right? The whole cosmic order is under me. So all this he mentions, right? So therefore, this is our situation. We are now within this material creation. So I mentioned this already. I'll just move on to the next point. So after talking about his inconceivable potencies, Krishna then talks about how we can know him. Who are the people who can know him? So Krishna says, 9.11, fools deride me when I descend in the human form. So we have fools then, and we also have fools now. People who don't accept that Krishna is that Parabrahman, that Krishna is that Supreme Personality of Godhead. So Duryodhana didn't accept at that time. All the demons, Kamsa didn't accept, Dantavakra didn't accept, Shishupal didn't accept, all the Ravana didn't accept when the Lord came in so many ways. So they will always be there. So who are those? Muddas cannot know me, right? They cannot understand. Why they cannot understand? Because they are sinful in nature. Because they are sinful in nature, they cannot understand the potencies of God. The sins block them from understanding. It's like a cloud. God is like the sun, and our sinful tendencies are like the cloud. So if our sinful tendencies are very strong, then it will completely block the sun and make it look like it's, sometimes terrible rain clouds come, it looks like it's evening, right? Though it is daytime. So it's not that the sun isn't there, but they can't see the sun. And is the sun affected by the clouds? No, the sun is not bothered by the clouds. It doesn't matter to the sun. So that is the position of the Lord. But who can know him? Who are the people who can know him? The Mahatmas or the Bhaktas. They can know him, right? O son of Pritha, those who are not deluded, the Mahatmas, are under my protection, the protection of the divine nature. They are fully engaged in devotional service. So these are the type of people, right, who can know him. Always chanting my glories. And how do we recognize them? How do we recognize those who are his devotees? Very important verse, 9:14. Satatam kirtayanto mam yatantascha drida vrataha Namasyantas chamam bhaktya nitya yukta upashate. So how do we recognize a devotee of the Lord? Always chanting my glories, either chanting his names or preaching, right? Or chanting Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam. Satatam kirtayantomam, kirtan, always doing kirtan. Kirtan means either chanting his names or preaching his glories. And then we endeavoring with great determination. So following the bhakti path with great determination. Yatantascha drida vrataha, great determination. They are not easily distracted. So they bring themselves to this point. What else do? They bow down before me. So simply by bowing down to Krishna, the devotional service is started. We get great benefits simply by bowing down to the Lord. These great souls perpetually worship me with devotion. So this is how we can understand who is a devotee. Okay, let me just quickly finish off. Others who engage in sacrifice by the cultivation of knowledge worship the Lord as one without second, right? So some directly worship the Lord, some indirectly worship the Lord. For example, these are pure devotees. Here Krishna is talking about the material people, materialistic people, the fruitive karma kandis. They perform sacrifices, they perform yagyas. They don't mean to worship Krishna directly, but simply by performing the sacrifices, ultimately they are indirectly worshipping the Lord. So still they are benefited. Not as directly as the devotees, but still they are benefited. Because why? So Krishna gives the reason. Because it is I who am the ritual, I the sacrifice, I the offering to the ancestors. So simply by following the Vedic injunctions, indirectly one pleases the Lord. But that process is a slower process. It's a very gradual process. It takes many lifetimes. So Krishna says, therefore, leave this process and become a yogi and take up bhakti yoga much faster. Within this life, one will go back to Godhead. Right? So that's what he's saying. So jnanis and karmis ultimately worship him indirectly also. But Krishna's recommendation is to directly worship the Lord. And then Krishna talks about the goal. So if you do all this, what will happen? Ultimately, you will attain me, Ishvara Parama Krishna, the prayojan. Prayojan means the goal. So he says, I am the father of this universe. I am the mother. I am the support. So you will come to this realization. By performing bhakti yoga, we will come to this realization. This is how we can understand if we are advancing. We will come to this understanding that actually Krishna is everything. In the Bhagavatam, there's a beautiful verse. Vasudevam sarvam iti, Vasudevam sarvam tyaga, Vasudevam sarvam like that. There are many things. Everything is Vasudeva, everything is Vasudeva. And Krishna is also saying the same here. I am the father of this universe, I am the mother, I am the support, I am the object of knowledge, I am the purifier, I am the syllable Om, I am the Vedas. It goes on. I am the goal, I am the sustainer, the master, the witness, the abode, the refuge, the most dear friend, the creation, the annihilation, the basis of everything, the resting place, the supreme cause. Sarva Karana Karanam. So I am the cause of everything. And then he goes on, both spirit and matter are in me, right? So Antaranga Shakti, Bahiranga Shakti, which is material energy, is both part of Krishna. And then Krishna will say, this is the secret, Raja Guhyam. And then he talks about the secret. The secret is the karmis do not know all this. And the envious do not know all this. And Krishna says, I preserve the bhaktas. And he says, I am the only enjoyer and master of all sacrifices. So this is the secret. People ultimately don't know, but if they care to understand, then they will come to this realization. So this is what Draupadi realized, right? So Draupadi, you can see the picture of Draupadi. when Draupadi was going through this situation where she is being disrobed by Dusashan, by the Kauravas, and unable to help her, all the Pandavas, she raised both her arms and cried out to Krishna. What did she do? Satatam kirtayantomam. She started chanting the names of Krishna. So therefore, this beautiful verse, Ananyas chintayantomam ye janaha paryupasate tesham nityabhiyuktanam yoga shemam vahami aham. But those who always worship me with exclusive devotion, meditating on my transcendental form, what does Krishna do for them? She raised her arms, and by raising her arms, did it make it easier for Dushashan to pull her sari away? No, because she raised her arms and raised them towards Krishna, Krishna carried what she lacked. Her arms were not there to hold on to the sari, but continuous sari came, right? So I carry what they lack and I preserve what they have. Krishna's promise for them. Therefore, finally, Krishna says, 933, having come to this temporary miserable world, somehow or other, for whatever the reason in the past, we have come here to this material world, which is temporary and miserable, right? Krishna says, please engage in loving service unto me. This is the fast shortcut way for you to come back. So therefore, from verses 925 to 934, Krishna reveals the bhakti path, the path of devotion. What are the things we need to do in the bhakti path? So he gives some practical spirituality, some practical understanding of what we need to do. So he says, offer me food. If one offers me with love and devotion a leaf, a flower, a fruit, or water, I will accept it. So Krishna is willing to accept our offerings. So by giving our offerings to him, we become benefited. Krishna doesn't need our offerings, but we offering to God, we become purified. Our food becomes purified. This is part of the bhakti. This is bhakti. And then he says, whatever you do, whatever you eat, whatever you offer or give away in charity, whatever austerity you perform, do that, O son of Kunti, as an offering to me. So dedicate everything to me. So in this way, when we connect to Krishna, our activities suddenly become bright. They all become purifying for ourselves. So what we need to do is we need to connect to Krishna. So this is what Krishna says. So it's practical, spiritual understanding of the bhakti path. So therefore he says, give all your offerings to me, engage everything to me. And then he further tells, you need to also develop some qualities. Krishna says, do all these things, chant the holy name, do hearing, chanting and everything, offer your food, dedicate your activities to me, but at the same time, also develop these qualities. Learn to see everyone equally, right? Be equal to everyone, but especially be friends to devotees, right? So Krishna says, I am equal to everyone, but I am friend to the devotee. And then he is also very forgiving. My devotee never perishes. Even if we accidentally do some mistake also, Krishna protects us. He still gives us chances, right? This is the verse promised in 930. And it's an easy path, a joyful path. Anyone can take to this path. Low birth, Chandala, Shudra, doesn't matter. Low or high birth, anyone can take to this path, which gives equal benefit to everyone. And from verses 933 to 934, he continues to talk about devotional engagement. He tells, please engage yourself in my service. Engage your mind, always thinking of me. Become my devotee. Offer obeisances to me and worship me. So chant my name, do worship and seva to me. So these practices of devotional service will purify and very quickly bring us to the higher platform. And finally, 934, being completely absorbed. So by doing this constantly, imagine we chant his name, dedicate our activities to him, eat prasadam which is offered to him, our consciousness will become absorbed in Krishna. So then Krishna says, being completely absorbed in me, surely you will come to me. So this is the secret. So we have a very beautiful verse in the Bhagavatam, right? It says, although not having fully realized, do we have to fully become Krishna conscious? So Krishna says here, Bhagavatam, although not having fully realized Krishna, persons who have even once surrendered completely unto his lotus feet and who have become attracted to his name, form, qualities, pastimes, are completely freed of all sinful reactions. Even if we have not completely absorbed, even when we are in the trying situation also, we can become free of sinful reactions. Why? Because they have thus accepted the true method of atonement. So Krishna is like the parent who's so eager. Simply when he sees the jiva taking up this path, he becomes so eager and so happy that he's willing to close eyes for all the mistakes that we make. He's willing to close eyes even if you're not fully, he's so eager. So he's giving many discounts, many benefits for us. Even in dreams, such surrendered souls do not see Yamaraj or his order carriers who are equipped with ropes to bind the sinful. So these are the direct interaction Krishna has with us. When we take up the bhakti path, Krishna directly interacts with us in our life. So this is the wonderful thing which we see, which we don't see in the jnana path because we have rejected Krishna. But in the bhakti path, we have the direct, engagement with the Lord. So with that, we'd like to end this chapter 9 summary. So it's a very, very beautiful chapter, one of my favorite chapters, chapter 9 Bhagavad Gita. Please read it, go through it again. Simply by reading this chapter 9, it's very nice. Krishna, it shows how eager Krishna is to have us back with him. So it's a very beautiful feeling that we get in our heart. So that way we can also develop our faith. We can increase our faith in also trying to get back to Krishna. So let us give food for our soul. Let us continue chanting this Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Sri Advaita Gadadara, Sri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And I hope we can go on chanting. So with that, we'd like to end this. Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Sri Krishna Bhagavan ki jai, Radhe Shyam ki jai. So any questions from anybody before we close? Okay. So I hope you enjoyed that session. I'm sorry again, I took up more time, 9:30 already, 1.5 hours. I just don't know how to speak less. Trying my best, but I'll try my best again. Anyway, this also I wanted to mention this Thursday, I'm also having Srimad Bhagavatam class. I will put the invitation in the group on Thursday. If you are free, you can join also. 8 to 9:15, same time like this. So with that, thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Have a good evening, what's left of it. And I'll see you all again. Bye-bye.